15 and 16. We did up to 14 yesterday. We did 3 yesterday.
That's right.
12, 13, and 14.
That's right.
So today I have 15 and 16 ready,
Right.
to some extent.
Hare Krishna. So welcome to the School of Vedic Studies. We have our session number 6 on the synopsis and overview of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam with His Grace Basu Ghosh Prabhu, who is the president of the ISKCON temple in Baroda and the vice chairman of the ISKCON Bureau, the governing body in India. So this is our 6th session, and we're going to cover chapter 15 and chapter 16 from the first canto. Over to Basu Ghosh Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarane. So yeah, I've taken notes, but while reading these chapters and taking the notes, frankly, I wasn't so satisfied with, having to describe it in this way. Rather, reading Parayanam, reading the chapters might have been better. But anyway, here goes, because we don't have much time, but we'll take 15 minutes per chapter. So the Pandavas retire timely. So the first 4 verses of the 15th chapter describes the lamentation of Arjuna, who had returned from Hastinapur to Dwarka and met his brothers. Returned to Hastinapur from Dwarka, having met his brothers, the Pandavas. They saw that he was dejected. And then he reveals that Lord Krishna left the world. And he describes Krishna's pastimes to Yudhishthira in verses 5 through 10. In verse 11, he recalls the visit of Durvasa and his 10,000 disciples to the Pandavas while they were in the forest. And Lord Krishna saved the Pandavas from being cursed by Durvasa. 12, Arjuna recalls his fighting with Lord Shiva, who had taken the form of a hunter, a kirata. And he obtained Pashupat Astra, and he from Lord Shiva. And then afterwards, he visited Indra Swarga in his own body, which is almost impossible for anyone in the material body to do. Then he recalls saving Indra from Nivata Kavacha Rakshasa by engaging in a fight with his Gandiva bow during his stay in Indra's abode. Verses 14 through 17, Arjuna recalls defeating the Kauravas by Lord Krishna's grace in the battle of Kurukshetra. And Lord Krishna has saved him from his enemies, and some of the enemies are described, and the other calamities that he faced on the battlefield. Now, this is just a synopsis, not a blow by blow. Verses 14 through 17. Okay, that was 14. 18 and 19, Arjuna recalls his intimate dealings with Lord Krishna, treating him as a friend and not as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which he comes to realize. Verses 20, 21, he expresses his sadness at being separated from Lord Krishna to Yudhishthira. 22 and 23, he describes the fratricidal war of the Yadavas at Prabhas on the bank of the ocean and the bank of the Saraswati. 22 and 23, And 24 and 27, he describes that he expresses to Yudhishthira that the annihilation of the Yadavas was the will of the Lord, who had descended to lift the burden off of Bhudevi, Mother Earth. Now the burden was that there were many kings who were proud of their armies and their wealth, and they engaged in adharma. And so the same thing with the Yadavas is applied. Although the Yadavas were the Devatas, the demigods who had descended to participate in Lord Krishna's pastimes during his avatar. (28 to 31) Sutta describes that Arjuna became pacified by remembering Lord Krishna, even though he expressed lamentation about the disappearance of Lord Krishna and then the disappearance of the Yadavas. In these verses 28 through 31, Sutta glorifies Arjuna in various ways and describes how he transcended Maya. And he became gunatit, free from the lower modes of nature. Oh. In 32, Yudhishthira, hearing all of this, decides to leave the world. And his time as king ends. Kunti Devi leaves the world remembering Lord Krishna. Excuse me. Then verses 34, 35, and 36, the disappearance Leela of Lord Krishna is described, and it is described that at that time, the personification of Kali Yuga entered the world. 37 through 44, Yudhishthira understood Kali Yuga was about to begin. So he relinquishes Raja Vaibhavam, all the opulences of the kingdom, and he changes his clothing from a king's clothes to a mendicant's clothes. And he begins to perform austerities and then leaves the kingdom to perform austerities in the forest as a tapasvi. That is described. Excuse me, Maya is attacking me, naturally. 45, the other Pandavas follow Yudhishthira to the north. So they head to the Himalayas to leave the world. 47 and 48, the sutta glorifies the Pandavas and their transcendental status, and how they became detached from all the opulence they had and the material world in general. 49 describes that Vidura, who was with Dhritarashtra and Gandhari when they did the same thing, when they headed to the Himalayas, he was with them. That was in the last chapter. He went on Tirthyatra after the disappearance of Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, and he went to Prabhas, and he left his body there, the same place where the Yadavas fought and annihilated each other and destroyed whatever was left of the Yadu Vansh. And he returned to his post as Yamaraj in Pitriloka. And 50 describes Draupadi and Subhadra following the Pandavas to the north, to the Himalayas. And the last verse, 51, glorifies the departure of the Pandavas for their next lives. So I did that in 10 minutes. So number 16, I have 20 minutes. So how Parikshit received the Kali Yuga is the title of the chapter. These first The first canto was written by Prabhupada in Vrindavan. The purports was written, and the translation and purports was done by Prabhupada and printed in Delhi originally. Later on, he had it edited by different disciples, and it was reprinted. Why did I remember this? And then the rest of the Bhagavatam Prabhupada did while traveling, gradually, slowly. First, they were printing even one chapter at one point, translations. And then they would do one canto at a time. And Prabhupada translated up till the 10th canto, 13th chapter. And then he disappeared in November 1977. So I've taken out one verse from this chapter that I wanted to read. However, in this chapter, there's going to be let me tell you, I think, boy, here it is, 26 through 30, I will read out the shlokas. They're very important. So let's start at the beginning now. So after verse number 1 is after the departure of the Pandavas, Parikshit ruled the kingdom. Parikshit married the daughter of his maternal uncle. In India, even today, because the wife takes a gotra of the husband, so the maternal uncle's children have a different gotra. So certain communities follow this system of marrying their maternal uncle's children. And so Uttara was the wife of Abhimanyu. So Abhimanyu's maternal uncle was the king of the Virat. So his daughter he married and had 4 sons, and Janamejaya was the eldest. That's verse number 2. Verse number 3, Parikshit appoints Kripacharya as his guru, and he performed 3 Ashwamedha yagnas on the bank of the Ganga under the supervision of Kripacharya. Then number 4 describes that Digvijaya Yatra, Parikshit traveling and conquering different kings. And during that yatra, he sees the personification of Kali torturing a cow and a bull, and he caught hold of Kali to punish him. And hearing this, Shaunaka hears this from Sutta, Ugra Shrava Sutta, and inquires about this and its relation to Lord Krishna from Sutta Goswami. So this verse, the 9th verse, is a key verse. And the verse is, Mandasya Manda Prajyasya Vayo Mandayushash Vayo Mandayushash Chavai Nidraya Hriyate Naktam Divacha Vyartha Karma Bihi. So the translation is lazy human beings with paltry intelligence and a short duration of life pass the night sleeping and the day performing activities for no transcendental value, that are for naught, for nothing. So Bhagavatam Paramahamsa Samhita is meant for those human beings with a little intelligence who should understand that material existence is not the all in all. But far from it today, we're 5,000 years into Kali Yuga. People really think that whatever they're doing on a day-to-day basis is real life. And it isn't, because this body is destroyed. When it will be destroyed, and no one can say. But after 65, you come to realize that it won't be far away. You know, from the childhood, when you're a child and a young person, you don't think, you might see people dying, even young people, but somehow you feel you won't die. And that is, there's a verse, I'm forgetting that, where, Mahabharata, famous verse, Ahanya hani bhutani ganti amalayam sheshastavaram ichanti kim ascharya matav param. What is the most wonderful thing? Yamaraj takes the form, that this is a little confusing because Yamaraj is Vidura, and it says that, you know, Vidura, Yamaraj left his heavenly abode, the Pitri Loka, and came as Vidura. But in the Mahabharata, it's described that Yamaraj appears in front of Yudhishthir while he's in the Vanavas and questions him, and it's called Yaksha Prashna. He takes the form of first he takes the form of a bird, then he takes the form of a Yaksha, which is a Devata. And so he asks so many questions to Yudhishthir, but he says, what is the most wonderful thing? And Yudhishthir's reply, day and night, so many people are going to Yamalokam, but the rest of the people feel that, you know, they want to remain here. They don't think they'll die. But we all have to go. So let's go. That 10 and 12 is Parikshit's Digvijayatra, and the areas that he conquered are described. And in 13 to 15, there's a description of Parikshit hearing the glories of the Pandavas and Lord Krishna during the Digvijayatra. Wherever he went, he heard people glorifying the Pandavas and Krishna. The whole world was glorifying Krishna. And so he began to reward those people. As a Danavira, Parikshit was a very charitable king. So he gave them material gifts. And by hearing these glories, it made Parikshit into a staunch bhakta of Lord Krishna. That's described in 16. 17, Sutta begins to describe more of Parikshit's hearing of the glories of the Pandavas and Lord Krishna during this Digvijayatra. In different places he traveled, and everywhere his grandparents, the 5 Pandavas and Lord Krishna were being glorified. 18 and 19, now Sutta begins the narration of the conversation between Dharma in the form of a bull and Bhumi, Mother Earth, in the form of a cow. And the dejection of Bhudevi, seen by Dharma, is narrated, and Dharma inquires from her into the cause of her grief. 20 to 24, this 19 to 20, I finished. Now 20 to 24, Dharma inquires further from Bhudevi. Details of the symptoms of the fallen age of Kali are narrated. The degradation of the Brahmanas, the population in general during Kali Yuga. One thing I forgot to write down was that the governments harass people in Kali Yuga. In these, between 20 and 24th verse of we're in the 17th chapter now? No, I'm sorry, 16th chapter. 16th adhyaya. In 25, 20 to 24, Dharma tells Bhumi that Lord Krishna descended to lift the burden of the earth, lift the burden off of her. She's the earth personified. And yet she's unhappy, even after Krishna killed all the rascals which were a burden on the earth. Vinashaya chadushkritam, as it says in Gita. Paritranaya sadhunam, vinashaya chadushkritam, dharma sanstapanarthaya. Krishna came to reestablish religious principles, but Bhumi was unhappy. And so 26 to 30, I am going to read to you now. we have time. Give me a moment to open the shlokas. 26 to 30. So Bhumi tells Dharma that all these good qualities reside in Lord Krishna. So here are the shlokas in Sanskrit. Satyam, Shaucham, Daya, Shantis, Tyagas, Santosha, Arjavam, Shamo, Damastapas, Shamyam, Titiksho, Paritashrutam. So this is very similar to some verses in Bhagavad Gita. Jnanam, Viraktir, Aishvaryam, Shauryam, Tejo, Balam, Smritihi, Swatantriyam, Kaushalam, Kantir, Dhairyam, Mardhavam Evacha, Pragalbhyam, Prashrayashilam, Saha Ojo Balam Bhagaha, Gambhiryam, Stairyam Astikyam, Kirtir Mano Nahankritihi, Ete Chanye Cha Bhagavan, Nitya Yatra Mahagunaha, Prartya Mahatvam Ichadbhir Naviyanti Smakarhichit, Tenaham Gunapatrena Srinivasena Sampratam Shochami Rahitam Loke Papmana Kalinekshitam. So the translation of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shlokas, 26 to 30, is in him, in Lord Krishna, reside, if you couldn't understand the Sanskrit, truthfulness, cleanliness, tolerance of another's unhappiness, the power to control anger, self-satisfaction, straightforwardness, steadiness of mind, control of the sense organs, responsibility, equality, tolerance, equanimity, faithfulness, knowledge, absence of enjoyment, absence of sense enjoyment, leadership, chivalry, influence, the power to make everything possible, the discharge of proper duty, complete independence, dexterity, fullness of beauty, serenity, kind-heartedness, ingenuity, gentility, magnanimity, determination, perfection in all knowledge, proper execution, possession of all objects of enjoyment, joyfulness, immovability, fidelity, fame, worship, pridelessness, being as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, eternity, and many other transcendental qualities which are eternally present and never to be separated from him. That personality of Godhead, the reservoir of all goodness and beauty, Lord Sri Krishna, has now closed his transcendental pastimes on the face of the earth. In his absence, the age of Kali has spread its influence everywhere. So I am sorry to see this condition of existence. So this is Bhumi Devi talking to Dharma the bull. Dharma in the form of a bull. After that, Bhumi tells Dharma that she is thinking about herself, the earth planet, as well as of him and the Devatas, the demigods, the Rishis, the Pitris, and the Bhaktas, devotees and followers of Varnashram Dharma. So in the shlokas here, Sutta Goswami is describing how Bhumi herself is glorifying the followers of the Varnashram Dharma. Think about it. Because Prabhupada did in one purport in the second canto express a doubt that the people of the West, the Malechas and Yavanas, which is the caste that I belong to, could not follow the Varnashram Dharma. And yet he insisted not only in this first canto, but later on in purports in the 9th canto, in talks in Vrindavan and Mayapur, he said that ISKCON devotees must follow Varnashram Dharma. And anyone in ISKCON who has the title Swami or Goswami is following Varnashram Dharma, because Sannyas Ashram is part of Varnashram Dharma. So how can you be against it and be a follower of ISKCON? Not possible. Can't be against Varnashram and be a follower of ISKCON. So we don't have a lot of time left. There's just a few verses left. 32 and 33 is an important description of the fortune of Bhudevi. And then because of the appearance of Lord Krishna on the earth planet, and then feeling bereft of Lord Krishna due to his disappearance. And then in 34, Bhumi describes the burden that the Rajas had placed on her with their militaries, and both he, Dharma the bull, and Bhudevi in the form of a cow have become weak. And then 35, Bhudevi expresses lamentation at the departure of Lord Krishna. And then the last shloka, 36, says Parikshit reached the banks of the Saraswati River during this time when Dharma is talking with Bhudevi. So 3.5 minutes, not even, just 3 minutes left. So should we open it up, Prabhu, for questions?
Yes.
I'll open my headphones so that those who are watching on Facebook and YouTube will be able to hear.
Thank you, Prabhu. And
I mean,
I have a
hopefully
small question on text 31, and I think you touched upon a very important point where Bhudevi is saying, she talks about in the verse, in the translation, devotees of the Lord and all men obedient to the system of Varna and Ashram. That means the devotees of the Lord also have to be obedient to the system of Varna and Ashram. Is that understanding correct?
That's what Sutta is saying, right? Here's the shloka itself. Atmanam chanu shochami, bhavantam chamarottamam, devan pitrin rishin sadhun sarvan varnas tathashraman. So Bhumi tells Dharma that I am thinking about myself, and also, O best among the devatas, about you, Dharma, as well as about all the devatas, rishis, Pitri, Loka, what is it? Pitrin, the residents of Pitri Loka, devotees of the Lord, which sadhun, those who are good, the devotees are good, and sarvan, all of them, varnan, the varnas, tata ashraman. So varnas and ashramas, it's innate in Vedic culture and in Vaishnavism. But at the end, when you're liberated, there's no more varna and ashrama. It's for the material world. Although it's a reflection of what is in the spiritual world. So there's maybe in the Vaikuntha Loka, they may, for the sake of pastimes, follow, but not for the sake of becoming liberated. They're already liberated. They're all muktas. What is it? Nitya muktas. They're eternally liberated. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu. Any other question or comments?
Little smaller group today.
Yes, small. So we have Anupama Radharani Mataji from Dubai.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my respectful obeisances. Prabhu, in this verse 34, the annihilation of the Yadus is referred to as picking out a thorn with a thorn.
Yes.
So why is it that they would be a burden to this world after the disappearance of the Lord?
Well, the only response is that just like Dvivida was a monkey who had fought with Lord Rama against Ravana and the Rakshasas, but later on he had a very long lifespan and he came in the Krishna Leela, but he became misbehaved. And so Balaram killed him. So these things are hard to understand. Some of the Yadavas became puffed up, arrogant. The Pandavas did not. We see that the part of these descriptions are the humility of the Pandavas, and then they became austere and performed penances. And apparently, some of the Yadavas, they had immense power. They were devatas who had come to, be a part of Lord Krishna's pastimes. So Lord Krishna's will was that they go back to the, Devaloka. Just like Vidura, it says, went back to Pitriloka and became Yamaraj again. So that's the only understanding.
Thank you,
They
Prabhu.
went back to their, places in the heavenly planets. Like Bhishma, the Vasus, all of them incarnated as children of Ganga and Shantanu. Raja Shantanu was the great-great-grandfather, Bhishma's father of Bhishma. And yet Bhishma was the only one of the Vasus who incarnated who was not thrown into the Ganga by Ganga. Shantanu married Ganga Devi. And one by one children were born and she threw them in the Ganga. And when Shantanu proposed marriage to her, there was a condition that he should never question what she did. And when she tried to throw Bhishma into the Ganga, Shantanu couldn't tolerate that and he stopped her. And so she said, well, he was destined to remain here and the others were destined to go back to the heavenly planets, and my throwing them into the Ganga was sending them back to Swargalokam. So Bhishma was cursed to be in the material world for some time and not in the heavenly planet, in the Bhulokam, this world. So there are some things that are hard to understand, but in the Bhagavatam and in the Mahabharata, but there's an explanation. And the explanation was provided by our acharyas like Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, in their writings.
Right.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Did that answer your question? I hope.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you.
Any last question before we end the session today? Okay. So, Prabhu, I think we will have 2 more sessions, right? Or tomorrow?
No, two adhyayas are remaining. We can finish it tomorrow.
No, 3, 17, 18, and 19.
Really? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Let me take a look. We did 15 and 16 today. Okay.
That's right. So
There's 3 left, huh?
yeah.
Punishment and reward of Kali, Maharaj Parikshit cursed by a Brahmin boy.
Yeah.
If need be, we can go into 2 more days. Let's see if I can finish it tomorrow, but can't say.
Yeah.
I have to go over the chapter, take the notes.
Sure.
And I found that taking the notes is the quickest way to explain the chapter.
So we'll not rush it.
Limited time period. Yeah.
We'll keep it open.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Prabhu, again for a wonderful session. His Grace Basu Ghosh Prabhu ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Samveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Ancha kalpatarubhyascha we will see you all tomorrow morning again at the same time, and possibly we'll continue on Sunday also before we finish the synopsis on the first canto. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.